I've been really racking my brain about the Murktide matchup from Mill. It's one of the toughest matchups right now in the metagame, and we have this loose plan of Surgical Murktide toshes them out of the game, and I'll tell you what, okay, so at a base level, it's not a bad plan. The problem is, over a bunch of games, it just doesn't work, okay? The Murktide deck has extremely efficient threats, extremely efficient answers and pieces of interaction, and the idea just gets out-tempoed. We can't have, 8 to 12 copies of Surgical in our deck to make that consistent enough. Our turn 1 crab usually gets removed, or we can't even afford to play a turn 1 crab with needing to have something like Fatal Push Up or any type of removal for their turn 1 Ragavan, turn 1 Dragon's Rage Channel, or whatever it might be. There's just so many moving elements. So I wanted to try and use the gameplay that I'm going to show in the later half of this video to move forward a concept that I think could be a step in the right direction for trying to beat the Murktide matchup specifically, and potentially trying to apply it to other matchups. But for now, this video is just going to be focusing on an idea that came out of a Dono League game that I think is something worth exploring. It may not be the answer, but let's talk about Murktide Regent, specifically in the Murktide matchup for Modern Mill. I'm Shaf, aka That Mill Guy, and let's start us off. So first and foremost, let's talk about it from a modern metagame perspective. At 7.6%, the Murktide matchup is going to be there, and consistently you're seeing in the modern challenges, at least, obviously it's 5-0ing. The modern challenges, you are consistently seeing it top 8, top 16, top 32. Top 8s are usually 1 to 2 copies. Top 16, top 32, you're seeing 3 to 4 copies usually. So this is going to be a deck that does really well, and you will be seeing in more competitive environments, definitely at your LGS, and usually every so often in the league. It is a relatively easy deck to pilot, a quick deck to pilot. Maybe so much in the Moto sense. If we switch over to ticks here, it is more on the expensive side. It's nothing like Hammer at 400 ticks, so it's not really easily rentable, so that might be a barrier for people. But generally, this is a matchup that you have to have an ability to beat. I just don't think Mill has that positive win rate against it just yet. Looking at the various moving pieces here, we see obviously Murktide Regent, Ragavan, Dragon's Rage Channel. We see the cheap interaction in the sense of Unholy Heats destroying our crabs. We see Lightning Bolts going straight at our life totals. Expressive Iteration being probably one of the best top decks in the modern meta right now. Archmage's Charm on top of the counter magic. There's so much going on that we, as a Mill deck, are going to have a very hard time out-tempoing. Right, our Drown in the Locks line up with their counter spells, but the Archmage's Charm have too much value. Our Fatal Pushes line up with their interaction, but then, their Unholy Heats kill our crabs, as well as our Planeswalkers, and the Lightning Bolts just hit us in face. They have a lot more versatility than we do, specifically when it comes to Murktide Regent. In all angles. Let's list them off here, just off the top of my head. Delve, stopping our Drown in the Lock, being able to kill this consistently, and then even follow up, because you don't even want to mill them further. What if they have the second Murktide Regent? Speaking of that second one, it powers up the one that's already on the battlefield, because if you read that last line of text, when an instant sorcery leaves, it gets powerful, more powerful, so it's obviously going to get delved away with the second Murktide. And then not kind of on top of that as well, 7 CMC, really shooting down the versatility or the viability of our Tasha's Hideous Laughter to be really as effective as it can be. So again, being that primary plan of Surgical Murktide Tasha's, that's really hard because you need both those pieces, and then Tasha's being a 3 CMC sorcery, that's going to get hit by Counterspell when we're on the play. That's going to get hit by Counterspell, Spell Pierce, or Archmage's Charm when we're on the draw. Not to mention the plethora of other already tempo problems that are happening on the board. It's a hard plan to really get going. So let's talk about how we can approach this Murktide Regent card and potentially help us in the matchup specifically. So first thing that I'm thinking about is going to be removal, and this is going to be specifically in the sideboard. So we're already playing the 4 Fatal Push, we're already playing the 4 Drown in the Lock. Maybe you're like me, you're playing an extra copy of Murderous Cut in the main board to try and help shore this matchup up a little bit. But on top of that, I really believe, especially in the current modern metagame, you should be playing more options as well. And unfortunately, in Dimir, it's going to be very tough. We're not in white. We don't have Paths to Exile. We don't have efficient 1 CMC Exile effects, Tuck effects, whatever it might be in our colors. So we have to go with the next best option, which is going to be the Doomblade variants. Specifically Doomblade, for those of you who are unaware, being this very simple removal card, destroy target non-black creature, but there's Doomblade variants out there. So a 2 CMC, 1 black and 1, or sometimes black, instant speed removal spell that destroys a creature unless it meets a certain condition. So this destroys a creature unless it's black. So the 3 that I'm going to be looking at, obviously Doomblade is applicable. The problem is there's a lot of black creatures in the modern metagame right now, Luros being one of them. Think about that for a second. First one I want to talk about is Cast Down, right? So this is an option to kill Murktide Regent, not being legendary, killing a lot of non-legendary creatures as well, like Primeval Titan. The problem with this is that even in the Murktide deck, it does not kill Ragavan. Ragavan's a legendary. It does not kill Luros. It does not kill any one of the companions. Doesn't kill Turok. Doesn't kill Azusa. There doesn't kill Kroxa. There's so many things that this doesn't target. So it's close. It kills Murktide. I feel like there's still too many things that it's not hitting for it to be viable. Second up, Ultimate Price. Now this one's a little bit better, right? There you can hit Ragavan now. You can hit the Turok. You can hit things like that, but you can't hit Kroxa. You can't hit pretty much any of the companions that are relevant to us. There's so many things that you can't hit with this, but this one's a little bit better. Again, a lot more mono-colored creatures in the format, so Ultimate Price is definitely an option. And then finally, Infernal Grass is probably going to be the best option in terms of sideboard piece, but then this one's also going to be hard too because it destroys any creature, but the 2 life is pretty important, especially against a deck that's going to be swinging at you with an 8/8 flyer. It's going to be throwing bolts at your face. You're going to be fetch shocking to try and get your black pieces on tempo, on curve, whatever it is. 2 life is going to matter to you. So a bit of a give and take with all of them. Removal is an option, but there's downsides to the alternative options we have on top of Drown and Fatal Push. So the next option I want to go into is Graveyard Hate. So Murktide Regent takes advantage of the graveyard. So does Dragon's Rage Chandler, right? So we're kind of hitting 2 birds with 1 stone on this one. So being 7 CMC, that's not something that this deck is going to be able to reliably play, right? This deck is usually playing 18, 19, maybe 20 lands. And with that in mind, it's usually only going to have 3-4 mana on the battlefield. On top of that, maybe they get a Ragavan trigger 5, but they got to use that mana up every turn to cast Counterspell, cast their Jace if it's post board, cast their Blood Moon, whatever it might be. So it becomes a little bit tougher for them. So they're usually not going to be able to get it out. So let's talk about some of the graveyard hate options that we have. First and foremost, the main one is going to be Soul Guide Lantern, but the big reason why people don't bring this card in against the Murktide matchup in Mill is going to be because you just don't know when to fire this off. Do you fire it off immediately? Like you mill a bunch of cards, you fire it off, they have no graveyard. What value do you get out of that? You know what I mean? You played a card, exile their graveyard, but then you haven't really done anything. You're like down on cards and they still have the Murktide. They still have DRC, which they can play and feed their graveyard with its triggered ability. They still have so many ways that they can keep going. So what about a permanent effect? Something like Rest in Peace. Well, Rest in Peace is great being an enchantment, right? Being an enchantment type, it's going to be a hard subtype of permanent for the Izzet deck to deal with. The problem is, well, first and foremost, we're Dimir. We're not in white, so we got to splash into this. Second of all, this is going to shut off things like Murderous Cut in our own decks. Is going to shut off things like Visions of Beyond, which is fine. We're trying to beat a matchup. But then also, again, on the play, this is probably the most viable then, right? Because you're going to have the ability to play this before they get to counterspell mana. But then on the draw, this becomes a little bit tougher. You're going to be on the back burner. You're going to have to go Fatal Push. You're going to have to go Removal. You're going to have to be dealing with everything on curve. And then at that point, they probably have a Murktide out. And then what are you going to do then, right? Once they have the Murktide out and you cast Rest in Peace, guess what? Those cards in their graveyard are going away from the graveyard. So you might even grow the Murktide even more. So it's a really tough card to play once they already have a Murktide on the battlefield as well. So the last option that this game that you're about to see goes over is going to be Leyline of the Void. Now, hey, I know what you're thinking. Bear with me on this one. I'm not saying that this is the answer we need, but I think it's interesting. Right, so obviously off the top, you know how Leyline of the Void works. You're going to be playing 4 in your sideboard. You're going to try and mull to it. It's going to come out in the opening. So again, it being an enchantment, very tough for Izzet decks to deal with. Secondly, it's going to come down on turn 0. So you don't have to necessarily worry about, okay, when do I play it later? Technically you do, but it's going to have that effect immediately. They're not getting turn 2 Murktide out. They're not getting DRCs at 3. So just have that removal ready and you're going to be able to deal with this deck. But the big problem with this deck is, what do you do with subsequent copies? Because we're not playing cards like Collective Brutality anymore, right? We're not playing discard outlets to get rid of this card. So what do we do with those subsequent copies? They're essentially time walking us, because this is not really a relevant ability, once we play out the second one. This is not a deck that's generally going to have an answer to this card. We don't have to play a second one. They're just going to keep hitting us in the face with cards. We just have to keep drawing removal. So those are the pros and cons of it. We immediately shut off the DRC, the Dragon's Rage Channeler, and the Murktide Regent. But what do we then do when we get time walked, when we draw this card and we have nothing to do with it? We have nowhere to place it, and casting it is really, you can cast it, just a waste of mana. So I think that's what I'm going to leave to you all. This is an option, and I think it's a relevant option, right? We do have Dredge somewhere in the tier 2. We have Reanimator. We have plenty of graveyard base decks that are using DRC, Croxa. We have plenty of decks that are using the graveyard as value. So Leyline of the Void, heck, it even stops our opponent from using Endurance to shuffle back in their own graveyard. Endurance just becomes a flash 3/4. So there's plenty of options for a card like this. The problem is, I don't know if Mill can really take advantage of the card disadvantage that it presents. So I'll let you take a look at the games and see what you think. Again, this is just a Dono League. It's not the list I'm playing currently, so hope you'll enjoy the games there. But let me know what you think about the Murktide matchup. What do you think is the actual solution to our problem? Let me know. Watch the leagues and tell me what you think. Catch y'all in the next one. You know what? I'm just gonna approach this like completely differently here. I'm just gonna approach this like completely differently here. I am going to bring in 4 Leylines, take out orbs, bring in all of this, probably better off taking out Tasha's, actually, instead of orbs. Yeah, just bring these in. 1 card, Echoing Truth. The thing is, these 3 cards are actually good. I just don't know what to cut for them. But I'm trying a concept. We have access to Leyline of the Void, so I want to see what it can do for us. I want to see what Leyline of the Void can do for us here. We have access to it, so let's use it. Right? Cobra would actually be, like, sick. It's just like extra source of removal. So I'm wondering if Damnation is just not worth it. Damnation, and then like we brought in like 1 card. I think it was like Echoing Truth. Maybe we just bring in like both Cobras as extra removal. The last 2 cards I'm thinking about are literally just these, but Douthie probably doesn't survive. Yeah, this is fine. Do you ever come up with a list with either Mindcrank or Blood Chiefs essentially? Yo, I tried and it's just not a thing. Oh, it's not a thing. As much as I want it to be a thing, it's not a thing. It hurts me. It hurts me, but it's just so... There's so much potential. Yes, this hand slaps. Keep this. 100%. Put that on the battlefield. Eat me. Let's get it. Let's get it, opponent. Do what you need to do. Do what you need to do. Do what the do-ops do. Got turn 1 play? Doesn't matter. I got an answer to it. This hand slaps so hard. This hand is actually sick. It's actually crazy. Yo, if I can draw 1 more land, this hand is perfect. This hand is perfect if I can draw 1 more land. This hand is literally as perfect as it can get. 1 more land. Of course. 1 more land. Okay, so this is where we start running into that problem of Leyline of the Void. We found our problem early, so Leyline of the Void is stopping, obviously, the Murktide region, Dragon's Rage Channel, whatever. The problem is that... The problem is it's not giving us many other options right now because we've just drawn it. We've essentially been time walked. We've essentially been time walked for free. And I can't find a land. So what I need to do right now is I need to find a land. I need to find a land. And I need to resolve Ensnaring Bridge. I just need to power through all their counter magic. I need to resolve Ensnaring Bridge. Once I do that, it's really just gonna be about finding Collective Brutality and winning from there. Because they don't have any options past that. Okay, so here's where I interact with them. On their upkeep before their draw. So again, the least amount of information. If they want to use counter magic, they gotta use it here. They're gonna hit me with Ragavan. Hopefully they don't have a 1-drop follow-up. Whatever it is, this is where they interact with me. Sure. That's fine. So you get a treasure token. Yeah, Leyline is good with collective. We just have to draw it. That's the problem. Collective brutality would actually be sick here off the top. Collective brutality is actually sick off the top here. Because I can go just all 3 modes. I can go all 3 modes and just go off here. Yeah, you know what? Collective brutality off the top here is insane. I would probably go discard, discard, discard. I would keep... No, not actually. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I would probably keep both ensnaring bridges. They might have a way to like remove like a permanent or something. So it's probably best to keep like both bridges. Come on. So this is my opportunity to... Okay, so we've lost this game. We've lost this. Yeah, we've lost this game. This is GG. Because... Yo, we lost this game. That's it. That was our window. That was our window to play Ensnaring Bridge, and now we'll never be able to resolve it. I'll never be able to resolve Ensnaring Bridge. Oh, Lord. Okay. Okay. Yep. Archer's Charm is a good sign, though. Because it's just better to use Murktide Regen, right? Or not Murktide, sorry. I read Murktide Regen. It's better to use Counterspell in that case, so... See, it's a good sign. Okay, slow beats, slow beats. Another problem is that now we have a Test of Talents and a Leyline of the Void, which are 2 interactive spells, right? Or 2 spells that we either, like, can't really cast right now, and then we have, like, yeah, we just have 2 spells that we can't really cast right now. Are they gonna Archive Trap me? That would actually be hilarious. That would be hilarious. Okay. Yeah, I mean... Enjoy it, enjoy it, enjoy it. Later, later, Dylan. Ashiok Dream Render. Ashiok Dream Render. Ashiok Dream Render. Yeah, they know they don't need to interact with this. They know 110% they don't need to interact with this. Okay, there you go. You got an Unholy Heat target. Got an Unholy Heat target. You have 2 of them? Did the Rogue Mill build get anything? No. No, no, no. Is it winning? No. Rogues is tough, but did, I think, some type of, like, a Dimir, like, evasive deck might be able to work. Just the mana base is going to be tough, right? Because you're playing creatures and they're, like, tribeless, so... Like the tribes are going to be, like, working against each other, is what I mean. So I'm not going to fetch here to increase my odds of finding a land. Okay, perfect. So in that case, I'm going to try and resolve Ensnaring Bridge. You gotta be kidding me right now. I want to go with Jace's Phantasm sometime. Yo, it's probably not bad, actually. If you can chain off, like, multiple of those rogues, it's probably not bad. Yes. Now counter it. Now counter it. It's just such bad luck. It's just such bad luck. That's fine.